Hi, welcome to Season 5, Episode 6 of Everyday NLP Bites. And I've entitled this season, What Are You Saying? Because my focus is on language patterns. If you've not been watching or listening to earlier podcasts, my name is Florence Madden. I'm an NLP trainer and coach based in Cumbria in the north of England. I'm also the author of The Intention Impact Conundrum and the co-author of Everyday NLP. So each week I'm looking at a different language pattern. And these are important because the language patterns that I'm looking at are everyday. They are things that we are hearing in conversation and can easily slip by our notice. The reason this is significant is that the language that we use gives indicators of how we're thinking to ourselves and other people. And they also reinforce that thinking. So it's a bit of a two-way street. And on top of all of that, of course, the language that we use influences other people also. So my focus this week is on generalizations. Words like everyone, no one, all, every, never, always. These are referred to in the NLP Meta Model as Universal Quantifiers. And it's actually quite tricky to speak or write without using these. Mark Twain once famously quipped that all generalizations are false, even this one. Well, that may well be true. Nonetheless, it is tricky to speak without using them. And therefore, it's kind of important to notice when we're using them and what the effect is. Through this series, I've looked to use the examples that I'm hearing in conversations and in the media, just to, I suppose, indicate just how, or illustrate just how commonplace this kind of language is. So listening to the television this morning, I'm hearing phrases that all of us that have been watching or listening to news broadcasts will have heard time and again. Phrases like, everyone is doing their bit. We're all in this together. And everyone is finding this difficult. That may or may not be true. But it's what I'm curious about, is what the effect is on the message. Now, arguably, when we hear a phrase like, we are all in this together, whether that's true or not, I think it may well be a way of conveying and reinforcing a really positive message that we are in this together, and perhaps to foster a sense of responsibility for ourselves and for our community. On the other hand, when we hear phrases like everyone is doing their bit, and we see with our own eyes people that definitely aren't or not doing it consistently, then those kind of phrases can ring hollow. So the effect of this language really depends on the context. And of course, it's not just in the news, is it? Any parents watching this of children that have already learned to speak will have heard things like, you never let me do that, or you always say that. So let's just look at the effect of this language. So what I've also heard is someone saying to me fairly recently, of course, coronavirus doesn't really affect young people. Now, whilst they haven't used any of the buzzwords, all, every, whatever there, it is still a generalization. And if I may say so, I think it's a very dangerous one, because it carries with it the assumption that it's okay then, and that you can be certain if you're below a certain age that you'll be all right. And that's not necessarily the case. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late Associate Justice of the Supreme Court in the United States, said this: "I'm fearful or suspicious of generalizations. They cannot guide me reliably in making decisions about particular individuals." So what she's highlighting there is the danger of generalizations when we take them to be true. And in looking at the effect of them, then sometimes they have an effect and other times not. So if we say things like everyone likes good weather, then that probably won't have a major impact in most conversations. On the other hand, if you're in a business meeting and you start a point that you want to make by everyone thinks or no one will go for that, then there's every possibility that that will weaken what may well be a very valid point. And when you think about it, all forms of prejudice have their roots in a generalization, taking the behavior of some people within a particular group and generalizing across that. And another way in which this language can cause us problems is when we use it about and to ourselves in a negative context. So saying things like, "I could never do that. That always happens when I speak to that person." We are reinforcing a negative message to ourselves and reinforcing that message to our unconscious mind. So it's important to notice this language, these universal quantifiers, and just be mindful of when they actually may well be having an effect that we don't necessarily want. I'm going to finish on a quote today from Ezra Pound, the poet and critic, who said, "Any general statement is like a check drawn on a bank. Its value depends on what is there to meet it." So when we're tempted to use that language, or we hear it from others, it's worthwhile just thinking, what value is there in that statement? And does it stand up to scrutiny? Is it true? And what is the effect of it? So thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. Next week, I'll be along with another language pattern. In the meantime, if you want to find out more about the services that I offer, have a look on my website, which is www.florencemadden.co.uk. And thank you right now for watching or listening.